Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Lifting as We Design series, focused on how to start a successful design firm. We have four firm owners, firm leaders with us today. I'm Catherine Williams, and I wanted to do a little bit. Let's see, we'll start off, just for today, our sort of setup is that I'm going to do introductions of all the speakers. And then we're going to have some time where we gave them some questions early and they're going to go through those questions. And then we'll have another, I guess, 20, 25 minutes at the end to do questions from the audience. I'll just start by saying that this series or this session came about from Black Women in Architecture and Design Facebook group. With women asking about being firm leaders and how they could start their own firms. So through the magic of technology, we're able to host women from all over the country to talk about their experience as firm leaders and firm owners. So I'm going to go through the bios of each woman, and then we'll get started on their information. So Chandra Moore is the design director and founder of Cog Studio. She grew up in California, where she began her experience working in architecture firms, where she was a student in high school. She received her bachelor's and master's of architecture from the University of Detroit Mercy, and the degree culminated in a design thesis that focused on the meaning and mechanics of the urban community. In addition to analyzing urban communities like Detroit, Chandra was given the opportunity to practice in the United States and abroad, including China, London, Chicago, Los Angeles, among various other cities. And she also did a joint venture on project with noted architects like Zaha Hadid and Renzo Piano. And her specialties are as a project leader and manager, architecture and design, digital designer, ROI focus for clients. Her professional experience ranges from conceptual design to construction administration, and the opportunities that she's had has given her the chance to be the designer for the 34,000 square foot therapeutic wellness center for the Saban Center in Los Angeles, the St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, and design and construction administration service for Detroit's Riverwalk. So that's Chandra.
Hi, thank you.
Next, Nikita Reed. She founded Encore Sustainable Architects in 2012. She specialized in architecture, historic renovations, and sustainable improvements, and she is now an associate at Quinn Evans Architects. She's known for making high-impact contributions to design projects, optimizing sustainability, life cycle value, and long-term building performance. Her career has focused on preservation and revitalization of historic buildings, restoring them to new purpose, and economic vitality within the Mid-Atlantic. Nikita's commitment to preservation and sustainable design is reflected in her many professional and community volunteer activities. She has served on a number of nonprofit boards and is a gubernatorial appointee and chair of the Maryland Green Building Council. Nikita was educated at the University of Pennsylvania, where she has a Master's of Science in Historic Preservation, and she also has a Master's of Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania, and she got her Bachelor's of Science in Architecture from the University of Virginia. So that's Nikita. Next, we have Sandra Little, who founded Centric Design Studio in 2001, and she ran that studio for 17 years. In December 2018, her firm successfully exited and she joined Quinn Evans as a principal. She's an accomplished architect and dedicated advocate for the revitalization of the urban realm with expertise in building assessments and creative yet practical design strategies. She helps clients transform buildings, increase property values, and bring new life to aging communities. Sandra's portfolio reflects the diversity of neighborhoods she champions with successful cultural, institutional, educational, and commercial projects of all sizes. Her work in design revitalization and adaptive reuse projects consistently demonstrates a respect and sensitivity to the unique architectural heritage of local neighborhoods. And through her devotion to the challenging work that she has, she's helped renew, uplift, and sustain vulnerable communities. Sandra got her Master of Architecture from Lawrence Technical University and her Bachelor of Science in Architecture and Design from Lawrence Technical University. Sandra.
Thank you, thank you.
And our final panelist for today is Kathy Dixon. Kathy is the owner of K. Dixon Architects and the publisher of the book, The Business of Architecture. She is licensed architect with nearly 30 years of experience, including various building types and facilities. And she's been involved in every stage of the construction process and has experience in educational, commercial, and government projects. She's a graduate of Howard University School of Architecture, and she also received her master's degree in urban planning from UCLA with a focus on housing and community development. During her career, Kathy has worked on a number of educational facilities in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and she has spent several years working on national contracts for the Federal Aviation Administration, and including the Potomac TRACON and several air traffic control facilities. And prior to moving to government and institutional projects, she worked for 4 years with McDonald's, and she has also designed several civic facilities and faith-based institutions, including fire stations, churches, family life centers, schools, and senior housing. Kathy also holds a certification from the USGBC LEED program, NCARB, as well as CSI's Certified Documents Technologist program. She's licensed in Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and the District of Columbia. And in 2010, she joined the faculty of UDC in the Department of Architecture and Community Planning as an assistant professor. And you also might recognize Kathy as the former president of the National Organization of Minority Architects, and she served as president from 2012 to 2014. Thank you. All right, so let's get started on our questions for you guys. We have like a few questions for you guys, and I'm just gonna start with basically going down the list, and maybe the four of you can take turns answering them, and we'll go that way, sort of as a round robin, and you can respond off of each other if you want. We'll kind of keep this loose, but the main goal is to sort of share your perspective to our audience members. So the first question is, why did you decide to start your own firm? And this is a three-part. Why did you decide to start your own firm? How did you get started? And when did you want to know you want to start? So maybe starting at the beginning, I guess, when did you want to know you want to start it? How did you get started, and why? So who wants to go first on that one?
I can start, I guess. I knew probably in architecture school that I eventually wanted to have my own firm. I didn't know, when I would start it, or I wanted to go out and work for others first and gain more knowledge. So I was out in the profession for quite a while before I actually established the company. It was about 2003. I know that I think I've brought this up when I speak to other women, often takes them longer to raise the confidence to actually go out on your own. Some of my male colleagues jumped out of school and just did it immediately, but it took me a while. So I started it in 2013, and I think the reason is, I don't think of myself as a control freak, but maybe I am, because you want that control of what projects you go after, and the vision for the firm, and having more opportunity as far as rising the ranks, and just a variety of reasons that you want to control your own destiny. Put it that way.
All right.
All right, I'll go next. I guess what I was thinking about the dates. 2001 is when Centric Design Studio was incorporated, and it wasn't a full-time effort when the incorporation happened, and it was started by myself and my business partner Damon Thomas, and actually one other Lawrence Tech classmate we had, Christopher Bruner, who later kind of left the firm, but. We started it with the idea of like, yeah, we're gonna enter design competitions and flex our muscles in design competitions, and that'll be the launch to our firm. That's not how it happened at all. We entered like 3 different design competitions, and it was really tough getting one past the Mexican customs when we did one out of state. Out of the country. So lessons learned. But then the real rubber hit the road in 2008 when the recession hit the whole, U.S. And everybody says if the U.S. has a cold, Detroit has the flu. So we definitely went through it in the city of Detroit. And so both of myself and my business partner, Damon Thomas, got laid off within 2 weeks of each other, and called each other and were like, let's just go ahead and do it and figure out how to get it done. So that happened in 2008. And I knew I had to do that because at the same time, as it goes with women in architecture, I was caring for my parents at that time. So I needed something that I could have flexibility and raising kids at the same, all of this at the same time, caregiving and starting my practice. So I knew I couldn't leave the state, go somewhere else, find a job. So I was like, I buckled down and I felt like I did what I had to do to take care of everything that was going on in my life at the time. So that's kind of that's what made the rubber hit the road. It was a little, like Kathy said, I don't know if I'm ready to start yet. I don't think I know enough yet. It was a lot of that. But then as time went on, it really took off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll jump in after because mine was similar circumstances in terms of life happening and needing to make a decision. So I started the firm or co-founded it in 2012 with a former mentor of mine. At the time, I had been working at AECOM in Roanoke, but my dad was killed in 2011 in a drunk driving accident. And so I had this moment of what am I doing? What am I waiting for? I could die tomorrow. And so the work that I was doing with this former mentor, I figured I wanted to do more of that. And his firm had gone down in the recession. And so it was just him. And he had asked if I wanted to join his firm as a partner, even though it was just him. But I had the foresight to say no, and that if we were going to start a business, we needed to start something new. And for context, my former business partner is a 74-year-old white male. So knowing that I needed to make sure I had a voice and didn't get overrun, I knew we had to start something together as opposed to me just jumping on to his old firm. And actually, Catherine, in the intro, sorry I didn't correct this earlier. So the company Encore Sustainable Architects still exists. And I'll get into this later, but basically when I chose to leave, he wanted to keep running it. And so we'll get into that and partners and understanding when you're going into a business partnership and how you need to think about how you're going to get out of that business partnership. Because I do know there are a lot of baby boomers who are looking to sell their firms, and what does selling mean and what are you acquiring and all that. We'll get into that, a little preview of what's to come. But in terms of starting it, I think when I was working at AECOM, a lot of our consultants would call me and ask me preservation questions. And so I would answer the preservation question and then I'd be like, all right, well, they're doing what I said, so that's great. But then one day I was like, well, I wonder how much we're paying them to do what I said. And then I was like, oh, they can pay me. And so realizing that I knew what I was doing, people were coming to me for advice. Preservation and architecture had always been something I was interested in and I was good at. So I was like, well, why not? Let me try now. And if it fails, then I'm young enough to get another job. And it didn't fail. I started it at 27, stayed with it for 7 years, and then joined Quinn Evans last year as a way to keep growing. And it was a business opportunity I just couldn't pass up.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I started COG, let's see, 2000 and my daughter's 10 now, so 2011. And when I started it in 2011, I thought, I'm going to just come out here and I'm going to just enjoy and be, and I never wanted to start. That's just me being honest. I always thought, well, I'll just work for a firm forever. I worked for Smith Group and Gensler and traveled around the world. But then after I became, my husband and I, we were married for 3 years. Well, we've been married for 13 now, but in our third year, we had our first child, and she got a fever, and just like a new mom, I was nervous, and I said, well, what happens, if she gets a cold and things of that nature, and she ended up getting a cold, and I couldn't work from home that day. And so because I couldn't work from home that day, it just got, it just kept going on and on and on. And my boss at the time, I was looking for a smaller firm after I was done working and traveling, had an issue with me asking to work from home that day. And I thought, this is always going to be a continuing thing. And I said, okay, well, I either get out here and do this, or I go back to a larger firm like a Gensler or Smith Group and work there and try to maneuver my way. So for 21 years now, I've been practicing just in general, in architecture in general. And I started COG 9 years ago. And I just never thought that I would be this far, for sure, where you have employees and people and locations. It's all overwhelming at the same time. But I started because I literally became a mom, in the middle of architecture, and it just got tough. It just got tough.
Well, I think all of you, it seems like family was a big thing, and like having sort of like personal control over your time and what you were doing. The second question I have is about like fears and hesitations. You guys have touched on it a little bit, but maybe if you could talk about what were some fears and hesitations that you had to get over to make that leap. And I don't know, Chandra, if you want to go first since you went last time.
Sure. Some of the fears that I had to get over was, it was either my raising my family, or and being able to be with my daughter. I just had to get over the idea of, I want to be able to be there for her. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So it's kind of like all I know. My parents, they were entrepreneurs. So when I called my mom and I said, how did you do this? And she said, I have my own schedule. So I just started, and I thought, oh, that makes so much more sense of how you were able to raise 4 kids, send them to private schools, be there when I'm, missing my lunch, and leaving my glasses at home. She was just always there. So I had to like look past at I had to look backwards and how I grew up. And then I just said, well, I'll just do it, because if all else fails, then I'll just go back to being, working. So that's the fear I overcame.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So one of the fears I had, particularly since I had a business partner who was so much older, was being overlooked, particularly because there'd be people who would be like, oh, but you're just the face of the company. You're not really doing the work. He's bringing in all the work. He's doing everything, and you're just like the pretty face. And I was like, no, that's not the case. Like, I'm actually running the business, setting up the frameworks, because, the way that he's done things is not the way that is going to go forward. It's not the way that can continue going, because the world is different. Technology has changed. And so for me, it was a lot of finding my voice and realizing that I needed to speak up for myself. I needed to insert myself places where people weren't necessarily expecting me to. And so I think a fear of not being seen was something I had to overcome. That, and then also just the fear of, I didn't know what I was doing. There's a lot to learn in running and starting a business.
Yes.
And so aside from the architecture preservation side, it was also okay, well, now I need to learn how to run a business. And what does that mean? And being able to have the conversations and to know what metrics to look at. And it was really interesting being able to talk to other people. I think I'm generally an extrovert, but talking to people I don't know is difficult. It's difficult for everyone. And networking became a big deal. And so getting over that fear of walking into a room of older people that I didn't know, who didn't look like me, and being able to go up and talk to them and position myself in a way that they would want to continue the conversation and do business. And so networking is something that it's still a struggle, but it's awkward for everyone. So I embrace the awkwardness and just tried to make genuine connections where possible. But I think that those are the 2 main ones that were big fears starting out.
Gotcha. Sandra?
Yeah, there you go. You're muted, Sandra.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, very similar to Nikita's story. One of the big fears is definitely felt like I didn't know enough to become an entrepreneur. Didn't have entrepreneurs in my family as a background. I grew up in the Motor City, right? So a lot of my family worked for the automotive industry, were embedded in the manufacturing scene here in Detroit. So for me, I felt like, okay, I didn't have any entrepreneurship classes in school. I had business law, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So I pretty much had to I immersed myself into the entrepreneurship wave that was coming to Detroit due to the recession. Everybody in Detroit was just like, we put all our eggs in one basket with the automotive industry. How do we change that? And it was just this big boom of entrepreneurship that started in the city of Detroit with Tech Town Detroit and Design Core. Detroit used to be the Detroit Creative Corridor Center. And them pushing the entrepreneurship economy and the creative industry in Detroit was just like the right timing when I started my firm. So I felt like I had to get like a living MBA. So I literally located my firm inside of a building that was the entrepreneurship hub of Detroit, which is Tech Town Detroit, and we're on the 3rd floor of that building. And having a business partner, my business partner Damon Thomas, gave me that sounding board as well. So you felt like you weren't going crazy by yourself, starting entrepreneurship with both art, designers of color. And we just basically helped talk each other through scenarios. I mean, little things such as, okay, there's an RFP out, we have to go to this pre-bid meeting. Our old firms are going to be there. You have to, give each other confidence and say, okay, that's okay. We're past that. We're there now on our own, giving yourself your own little pep talk. But there were just the resources there to help me get that living MBA. Just the programs that I was involved with, which is the first one was the SBA Emerging Leaders Program, and just getting that background information on how to set up your back office for your firm and financials, and putting together an advisory board to help be that sounding board for you for, issues that you run into with your practice. So after immersing myself in that world, things just seemed to pick up. I learned the operations side of things. I was blessed to be a good networker, and I think that was a lot of the success there. And had the yin and yang with the practice with my partner. So he was very much in the office, making sure everything was going well with the projects, and I would be out networking and out there trying to win work. That was another fear too. How do I win enough work, right? How do I win enough work to support salaries and employees? And so it was a lot of fears. I could just keep
we're
going.
gonna come back to the project question.
But I got over them. It's just that you surround yourself with ways to get over them. But there were a lot.
Gotcha. Kathy,
All right.
fears, hesitations.
Definitely agree with Sandra. There are lots and lots of fears. My previous answer, I talked about just the self, having confidence in yourself that did I really know how to put a building together? Do I know enough to go out on my own and do that? And of course, there's the big liability issue. Of course, you're an architect, and am I going to do I have the knowledge it takes, and am I going to get myself into some trouble somehow with a liability issue? So that was an issue. Of course, there's always the having a steady paycheck issue, right? So I actually, when I did take the leap of going out on my own, I'd been working 9-to-5 jobs with very large companies for several years. But I was doing my own sort of residential thing in the evenings. There wasn't a conflict of interest because my full-time jobs were not doing any residential work. But when I was really ready to go on my own, but I was hesitant to do it because of that steady paycheck. Then surprisingly, or I guess a blessing came through, and I was asked to begin teaching at that time. So I was able to fall back on that salary of teaching while I was building up my firm at the same time. So that was definitely a blessing to have all those things. The stars, the planets came into alignment at that time. So that helped. I think another hesitancy just of starting the firm was I did it myself. I didn't have partners. So I was always asking people, do I really need a partner? Should I have a partner? Who should be my partner? And I just kept plowing through with just myself. And so far it's been great, but I actually now bring on a partner, so.
Yeah, that was a question I wrote down because as a follow-up, but let me go to one more question that was on our original list before we get to that, because I saw the chat a little bit. People were asking about this, but this is on our original list, was talking about clients. How did you land your first client, and maybe how you continued marketing for clients once you got started? So maybe Nikita, you want to start that one?
Sure. So the first client that actually was of substance, we won through an RFP. And so that one, at the time, it was for a VA project, and we were a preservation consultant to a contractor. And that one we found through FedBizOps. I don't know what it's called now. I know the name changes. But then we ended up actually being able to be on 3 different teams. And so we ended up being just the default, contract winner because we were on so many of the different teams. And that one was the one that was kind of gave us hope to keep going, because we were at the point where it had been about 8 months to almost actually 10 months about, and we've only been getting little jobs. It wasn't financially sustainable. And so it was like, all right, well, if this isn't going to work, then I need to go back and do something else, because I had put aside a portion of my inheritance to focus on trying to get this business off the ground. And so then I was like, well, time and money is running out. So I need something's either got to break, or rather we either have to win a job or I got to do something else. And so very grateful that we were able to win that job. And then after that, it was continuing on trying to find other RFPs, doing more networking, going after the local minority certifications through, so the state of Maryland has one, and then Prince George's County has one, and so all the different locales that we could, and then talking to other firm owners. And so I think I probably met Kathy Dixon around that time. And so I think Kathy, you and I might be the only 2 licensed Black architects in the county, Prince George's County, or female architects at least. And so it was great to just network and meet other firm owners to get advice on what to do. That, and then also a lot of board contribution work, because being young, being Black, being a woman, I knew I needed to find ways to establish more credibility in the eyes of others, because like I knew what I was talking about, but other people needed more convincing. So I joined a lot of boards, got really involved in giving back to the profession, and then helped to establish myself as a thought leader in the area.
Gotcha. Chandra?
Yeah, so very similar. So networking is kind of my thing. I love people. I love to hear everyone's stories. And so I started off with networking a lot. I started COG with really just $3,000 that I bought from my mom. And I got business cards and a laptop. So, and then I just kind of like hit pavement, and that's how I kind of started. And I was networking a lot. I was reading a lot of news articles, things of how to do certain things. I was trying to, just like Nikita, make sure I had all of my accolades together, make sure I had all of the things that I needed together. When I started at the time, I definitely wasn't licensed. And then I realized, okay, well, I need to figure on that and get that done. So there were so many things that I had to start and just like knock them out at the same time. So it just became a thing, because when you're working with big firms, you don't think you need all of these certain things. You're just ready to start, right? And in the bigger firms, you are, I guess, noticed and notarized. And so sometimes you take some of those clients, or some of those clients that you've worked on those great projects with, they follow you, they follow you from from LinkedIn. They want to see you. They want to check in on you. They want to see where you're going. And so you keep those relationships. And that's what I did. And then people were wondering, well, Chandra, what are you doing now? And things of that nature. And then I kind of just started. But I think it's very important that, you know, before you just jump out like I did, you know, it was like, you know, make sure you try to like log everything in and get all the things that you need as far as like your accolades and things of that nature from your license on. And then, but yeah, I just started networking. I was just a networking fiend.
I was going to follow up and say, so if you just started, whereas Nikita sounded like she may have had clients already, or I guess she started with an RFP, how long from you jumping out there with the business cards to getting your first client?
I got my first client in, let's see, I was with DC3 with Sandra Little. That's how I kind of like started there. Probably 6 months in. And
okay.
So 6 months later, and that's after me leaving a 6-figure job, you know, from a firm. And that's how I started. I literally just hit pavement and
Gotcha.
followed up with all of my networking people that have followed me over the years.
Okay. Sandra, first client.
Our first client was a friend, or actually a family member to my business partner. So it was for I think it was a 10,000 square foot child care center. She was actually looking to renovate a building that was by a daycare that she had started out of a home, and actually had moved out of that home. So the home was just the daycare, and that was it. And was looking to get into a larger facility that was right down the block in Redford, Michigan, and add on latchkey services and different things for school-age kids. So that was our first project. That was like 3 to 4 months within us starting from that layoff in 2018. So it was in the beginning of 2008. It was in the beginning of 2009 that we got that project. But the next set of things came from our existing network. So, and it was literally once we blasted social media with our firm when we started it. We was like, we don't. I started our firm with nothing. I was like, you know, when the layoffs came, I was doing the same thing that Kathy was. I was adjunct teaching at a local college here, and started that just because I saw the recession coming and people were starting to get laid off in the latter part of the year. So got a teaching job, and we both did that, both my business partner and I. But we just started with that as a backup income, and basically looking for that first project, and it was kind of crazy. But the next set of projects came through were very much from old firms that we worked for. So after we, you know, came out and said that we had started our old firm and we're blasting social media with our new logo and our website, and just, you know, it's bootstrap first way to marketing. We started to get calls from our old firm. We teamed up with Harley Ellis Devereaux for a DMC cardiovascular hospital here in the city. And there were really large projects that came after that. The Fannie Howey and Associates with Detroit Public Schools. We ended up being part of the program management team for that project. And those things were a big lift. Yeah.
Sandra, can you talk about why they sought you out to partner?
So for all of the reasons, it was with DMC Cardiovascular Hospital. The DMC actually put out that they wanted partnerships between organizations that included women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. It was the same thing with the Detroit Public Schools initiative, and they actually wanted Detroiters who were actually working on the projects as well. So our firm was based in Detroit. My business partner, I had moved out of Detroit at the time, but my business partner lived in Detroit, so they wanted that Detroit presence on the project. So we were basically location and the minority aspect of our firm.
Gotcha. Kathy, first client.
I'll say the first significant client, because 2003, after I established the firm, put all the pieces in place, got, it legal, I was still, moonlighting essentially. All the things that came into alignment at the time when I could leave my prior firm was this residential client. It was a historic mansion essentially in Baltimore. And it was significant enough that I could have some income from that project and do the teaching and leave the firm. So everything just came together that year.
But how did you get the client?
That client came to me.
Okay.
I get these calls all the time. In fact, I'm looking to work with a Black woman architect. So that.
Okay. Was it a Black client in particular, or? Okay.
Black male client. Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I am gonna switch. I think that's all of our sort of like pre-planned questions. Oh, actually, we did have one more. Okay, so I have two more questions that I want to ask because some of you have different situations. I wanted to ask about partnership. So I know, Kathy, you said that you were thinking about a partner or bringing on a partner now. Sandra started with a partner. Nikita started with a partner. Chandra, I don't know if that's come up in your talk and you're thinking about your firm, but Kathy, you want to talk a little bit about partnership and why that is something that you might be looking for now?
Sure. Gosh, it was years ago when I was asking all these people whether I should have a partner or not. Some women, it was actually a women's panel, and they were pretty much dead set against it. They were like, you'll lose all your control, don't do it, on all this. So anyway, so I really hadn't seriously pursued it too much, but being successful as you grow, you can't do it all. And you want to bring on people who their value will help continue grow the firm, and bring different qualities that maybe I don't have myself. And so currently I've been working with someone, say over the past year, who's essentially coming in from I don't want to say sweat equity, but they're coming into a position where they can become a partner, and I would say within the next year. So sort of behind the scenes, not behind the scenes. I can't think of the word, but they're going to come on as a partner eventually.
So we'll see an announcement in a year or so.
Right.
Possibly, if everything works out. Sandra, you want to talk a little bit about your partnership and how you got your partner and you guys started to do the firm together?
Yes. So actually my partner is my friend. So I think that was a big advantage that we had. I've known Damon Thomas since I was it a sophomore in college when he came to Lawrence Tech, and we've been friends ever since. And kind of what you learned in the studio, we could work together. We could talk about different issues. We could agree to disagree and move on. We had similar values and culture. I think that makes definitely a good recipe for a good partner. And like I said, we had a third partner that basically didn't have the same equity stake, but kind of came in and out of the firm a couple of times, left to go back to school for preservation and came back again, and then finally decided this wasn't for them. And you could see it. It was like they were not as committed as the two of us in the practice, and was just, you could see, I'm not sure yet, that fear was still there. And just like I said, it was just better for him not to continue on. So you'll learn real quickly. People will show exactly. So like I say a couple of year trial towards partnership is probably pretty good. You'll see working along somebody, beside somebody, you can see the traits that will work within your culture of your firm and what you're putting together, and your work ethic, your drive. I had to kick Damon out of the office sometime. I'll call him, be at home, and he's still at the office. So you'll see people who have the similar values that you have, and then that makes for a successful partnership.
Gotcha. Nikita, you want to talk about your partnership?
Yeah, so mine was a little bit different. So my business partner is a former mentor, and I had actually worked for him every year of undergrad and then full-time between undergrad and grad school. And so then after my dad died and I was ready to do something else, went to lunch with him because I still kept in touch with him and was talking with him. And so basically learning more about his firm going under and then knowing that I wanted to try something else. And so it just was a good opportunity to try something together. And so since he was already approaching retirement, the plan always was that I was going to be the majority owner. And then that way it would be a woman and minority owned firm. He would then stick around for maybe 5 years, help me get it off the ground. He would retire, and then I'd do whatever else I wanted to do. This is the part where I naively thought that that was enough to decide how the partnership would end, because I thought that was very clear. So even though we had an operating agreement, we didn't have a clear exit strategy. And so we got to the 5 years and I was like, all right, cool, he's about to retire. Nope. And so even though I was a majority owner, I was starting to want to do different things. And so then knowing that, we got to year 7 and then it was, no, he wanted to work another 5 years. And so then the timeline kept going on. And so it became more of a me needing to speak up for what I wanted to do and pay more attention to that partnership. And also realizing that the power dynamics were shifting because he was a mentor, is so much older than me. And the more that I advocated for the vision of my future that I wanted, and the more that vision changed from the vision of my future that he had for me, we started having more conflicts. And so just became needing to stand up and speak for myself and really pay attention to the business sense of it. And with that, Sandra was very helpful, because one of my concerns about not being a business owner anymore and kind of leaving that partnership was that me not being a business owner would mean that it would be one less minority firm in the country. And so thinking about it, yeah, go ahead.
No, I want you to pause on the exit for a second, because
sure,
I want to get Chandra on the partnership question, and
cool.
then we're going to talk about the exit question.
Okay.
Yeah, that was on the list, so don't worry. Chandra, you're going to talk a little bit about partnership and why you didn't pursue that, or if that's something that you're thinking about now.
Yeah, so when I was doing and I still am doing but when I was still at the very beginning of trying to figure out my whole partnership strategy, I thought, well, I didn't need one, right? And it wasn't until later in that I got so far in that I realized that I couldn't do a lot of it by myself. And very similar to Sandra and Nikita, where you're trying to find the balance and you're trying to find your team. And then I had one person who is really my mentor, and he's still in the middle of all of it and with me and rides with me. And I had the same thing with Nikita. He was a mentor. I loved him. He still loves me. We're still great, and that's Dr. Craig Wilkins. And he is an amazing mentor. So him and I go out to lunch a lot. We meet a lot of different things. And he's been a part of the journey where we had the same agreement, but towards the end, he has retired. He's never wanted to come back in. He'll, come back and forth, but ours is a true love. And so we kind of just do a lot together and we hang out together. So I build on mentors, my mentors have helped me immensely to get to where I am today. And so,
he wasn't necessarily, was he like in the business part of it, or was he more?
Okay. He was more on the business side and the architecture side. He would come in, give advice. Those who know Dr. Craig Wilkins, he's the advice. He's like, he does architecture, but he also gives really good advice at the same time of like how to do it. Because when you're working in the architecture firms like we all have, for so long, we're drawing our same type of process. We're specializing in the thing that we love the most. But then there's the back end that we just don't know. When you become a business owner, you're just so many things. You're just like, I don't know. And not only that, just things to bounce off of people, especially those who've already come before us. So I've enjoyed having him immensely, a part of the Cox team.
Gotcha. All right, so Nikita, let's bounce back to you and talk about the exit strategy, and then I'll let like you and Sandra sort of are in the same boat, and you're actually now at the same firm.
Yeah.
Because both of your firms kind of, I don't know if absorbed is what you would say. Well, Sandra's did
Right.
Nikita on her own.
Right.
And then Chandra and Kathy, I'm gonna let you guys talk about Chandra, your maybe exit strategy thinking, and then Kathy, you went a totally different direction and actually expanded your firm by acquiring another firm. So let's go to that now. And Nikita, I'll let you start.
Yeah, sure. So with the exit strategy, I think one of the things for anyone who's thinking about starting a firm with a partner, talk about the exit strategy now when things are good, because it's much easier to figure out how you want to separate, knowing that every partnership is going to fail or evolve at some point in time, and just be able to have that conversation when things are happy and you're excited and you're bright-eyed and looking forward. And so basically what came down to it was the offer was for me to come over, and so it would have been for the whole firm, but I was unable to convince my business partner to retire. And so as a way to leave things amicable, I chose to leave the firm and let him keep running it. He did end up changing the name because the firm that we co-founded was Encore Sustainable Design. It's now Encore Sustainable Architects. It's fine. And so now that, or as I was trying to make that decision, I did call Sandra and stalked her a little bit. And it was great to have those NOMA connections to get to her. But one of the piece of advice that she gave me was that, yes, it's whatever you're doing, you need to make sure it makes business sense, because you're a business owner, and at the end of the day, it still needs to make business sense. And so if the situation isn't, or if the firm that isn't as profitable where you currently are and you have this opportunity, you're a business owner, act like a business owner, and like not the starving artist mentality of, oh, well, architecture, I'll just do it for free and bleeding heart, and why should someone pay me? Like, no, you're a business owner, act like it. So I appreciated that. And so it was really just being able to have the conversation and legal structures and all the things that were needed to get out of that partnership and join the new firm. And so I'm at Quinn Evans, I'm an associate, but I'm also a shareholder. So that was also part of me changing ship, was that I needed to make sure I was going to have ownership equity in the company. And so once you become a business owner, the mindset shift between being an employee to being a business owner is very real. And so you see things differently. And so you start to understand the value of negotiation and just how everything runs, because it's not as mystifying. Like, you understand now the importance of timesheets and invoicing and AR and all of the things that go into the business. And why if you say you have this many hours and you work more, why that becomes problematic, because it actually does affect the bottom line. So just all the things that I learned from running the business, I use that as I leveraged and negotiated with Quinn Evans.
Gotcha. Let's go to you, Sandra, and you would talk a little bit about your exit from Centric to Quinn Evans.
So as part of my Living MBA, this another program that I was in was a national program called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business program. And I did that after the first program I mentioned, the SBA Emerging Leaders program. And both of them gave you like, here, look at your business for the next 3 to 5 years and say where you want to be and how you want to grow within that time. But in the Goldman Sachs class, one of the things they asked us is what is your exit strategy for your business? And I was like, I have no idea, right? I was like,
that's not uncommon. That's not uncommon, right?
I was like, wait a minute. I was just trying to get going, right? Now you're talking about how I'm getting out.
Yeah.
So that led to a discussion between my business partner, Damon, and I, well, what would we do? I'm like, I have a 14-year-old son, and I'm like, well, he's interested in architecture. Maybe it could be, succession, Yeah. So we started to talk about it, and we said, okay, we did have in our operating agreement to bring on associates as part of our agreement. We had never done that. We said, so maybe it could come from within. So then, I think after I finished Goldman Sachs, I think 2 years later, so we continued to do partnerships within our practice. We had teamed up with Quinn Evans on several projects, 20th Century Civil Rights Sites project, Detroit Public Schools, two of RPs we won together with them. As we continued to win work together, they were like, well, wait a minute, we need to talk. So I was like, okay. Centric actually literally became part of Quinn Evans' succession planning. So,
okay.
there was there were two principals leading the Detroit office of Quinn Evans, and that was Liz Nibby and Richard Hess. And Liz Nibby was actually going towards retirement, and actually one of the people that actually reached out, and we did several projects and RFPs with them, and I would reach out to her on RFPs. So when we came in and talked to them, they were like, we, think, it's been a great relationship working with them. And we've teamed with other firms, but this was really a good relationship and a good rapport we had working together with them. We started the negotiation. We started to say, okay, what would that mean? What are you talking about? And like I was telling Nikita when she called, because I think it was like maybe not even 6 months between both of us.
It was like, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Right.
They're grabbing up all the Black women.
It was 6 months within our firm coming over. Our president at Quinn Evans, Larry Barr, was like, hey, I got somebody else for you to talk to. I was like, okay. But I told her the process that we went through. I had my advisory, my mentors that I reached out to, and it became very emotional when we were talking about it between my business partner and myself. The big thing was, okay, since we both have gotten out of school and college and started our own firm, there are less minority architects practicing in Detroit than it was when we graduated. So that one was a big mental or emotional thing that hit both of us, like we'll be leaving everybody in a lurch, right? So when talking to one of my mentors, he's like, you guys separate and you both write out a list of what is the business reason for this, what is the emotional things you have for this, and separate it into buckets and then come back together and talk about it. So
Gotcha.
when we got to the
Sounds
business
like marriage counseling.
Yeah, right. It's not like we were fighting or anything, but it did help, because when we came back with our list, it was both like, okay, business wise, this makes sense.
Okay.
It's like this is towards retirement, towards income. This makes sense. And the emotional thing was like, yes, we felt like we were letting down the minority community by not having another design firm, but we kind of talked through that as well. So now I still make it an effort within our role at Quinn Evans, and now I'm a principal. I came in as a principal at Quinn Evans. Both myself and Damon. Actually, I came in as a senior associate. We both came in as senior associate, and then I got promoted to principal. And I recently got promoted to director of diversity and inclusion at Quinn Evans. So that's really new. I haven't even updated my LinkedIn profile, but I make it an effort to continue to help out minorities within my role in the larger context of a 200-person firm. I felt like it just increased my impact. So there's things like, the interns that are in our office, even remotely for this summer, are interns that are from variety of backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, actually getting this experience this summer. And also with, I still, things that I did in my firm, they were like, you could continue to do when you're in the Detroit office. And that meant a lot to me. So I'm working with Mayor Duggan's Grow Detroit Young Talent Program. We hire students from the city of Detroit every year who are, if they're Detroit students, it's 80% Black city. They're normally Black students that have come in to find out if they're interested in architecture. So we just continue to do those things and try to keep that same impact that we have. Working with NOMA and the project pipeline, a number of people from our firm still do that. Actually, like some of my employees who came over from Centric Design Studio, Shanita Rutland is very involved in that program and keeping that going. And I'm still involved in NOMA now, actually on the national board as Midwest VP. Stepped in for a year of appointment for Jason Pugh while he's president-elect. So just continuing to do what I was doing in my practice, that freedom helped me make that decision.
Gotcha. Kathy, let's talk about the other side and actually being acquiring a firm as not an exit strategy, but a transition to that sole proprietor to the next step in your firm.
Right. Definitely a growth strategy. So I've always looked at the architecture industry in comparison to other industries. Architects are not the best business people. You don't get that, business lesson learning in college and architecture school. So I look a lot toward the other professions and see what they're doing. And also there was the, I guess, anxiousness to grow faster. Acquisition is the way you do that in business. There are benefits to doing that. I could immediately have a much larger portfolio, which would enable me to go after more RFPs. You immediately increase your capacity, because I don't know how many times I was asked, how many people do you have, or you're too small, or that sort of thing. So I could immediately jump some hurdles if I just went out and acquired another business. Though, yes, it's insane. A small proprietor, one person basically went out and bought a firm that's bigger than myself, but it can be done. And so I would encourage everyone out there who's considering, even you're starting your firm, or you're just a small firm, think about acquisition as your way to get ahead of the game, instead of slogging away, as maybe a sub-consultant for years. It's going to take you quite a while to be prime for several projects, and use those prime projects to get more projects. So I'm sorry?
I was going to say, if you could talk a little bit about, someone asked a question about debt and financing, and I know like acquisition that's one place where, I know starting the firm, you guys talked a little bit about how you guys funded to start, but like thinking about acquisition, like how did you think about how you were going to get the money to do that?
Very much like buying another house. If you were going to buy a home or a second home, you get a loan. SBA is one of the sources for doing something like this. So you would get either an SBA loan, or get and find another bank loan, or other people who might loan you some money. But it's almost the same process. You're going to put some down, you're going to owe some, there may be some promissory notes or some other things in all the legalese. Get a good lawyer. I can't do that enough. Get a good lawyer. Because I would probably do some things differently if I had to do it again. But I think at the time it was probably a good thing to do. Ultimately, the two firms, actually right now they're still separate, because one was KDA was a certified woman-owned business, and the firm that I bought was a majority firm, and we can't mix the two. Because there are still contracts under each of them. Eventually, they'll probably merge into either KDA or some new entity. But that's the vision of purchasing that company. And it's beginning 3 years later, because that happened in 2016.
Yeah.
4 years later. Still just now beginning to see the benefits of having done that. So it's you got to be in it for the long haul.
I remember those conversations after you purchased, and it was like a year later, and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah. I also remember how Kathy blew my mind when she was like, oh yeah, there are brokers for architecture firms. Yeah. So I was like, wait, what? That's a thing? Yeah. So like, business as you're brokers. Trying to find different places or different firms that might be interested in selling, if you don't have that personal connection, there are literally people whose job it is to help people buy and sell architecture firms.
Exactly. And I found out about the firm. It was literally an email came to my account. It came to my email, and it talked about a local firm that was looking to sell. And just because I knew the market and knew, what firms are out there, I had an idea of what firm it was, and it ended up being that firm. So we went through about a six to 8 month process, of talking and more talking. And finally, after 8 months, we did the deed. We signed the documents, and I became the owner of it.
Gotcha.
So.
All right.
Actually something that NOMA is working on as well is how can, if you were looking to purchase another minority-owned firm, how could you do that? How could you, have a matchmaking between an older firm that's ready to succession out and you're looking to acquire? So it's a lot of resources coming up for that.
Yeah. Chandra, do you wanna jump in that topic at all about exiting or transitioning?
Sure. So just recently, I probably this year, I've probably been asked, let's see, in the year 6, I was asked for a buyout, and I just wasn't ready, because I was just like, I just got here, because I had a bet with my husband that if I can last 5 years, I would get another 5. So after I won that bet with him, then that's when it was time for, someone came and said that they wanted a buyout. And I was like, whoa, I just won with my husband. Like, no. And so I just kept going. And so now I'm at year 9. And this year I've had 2 offers and I've picked Sandra's brain, so we all go back to the queen of art for us, who is Sandra Little by far. So she's like she's amazing to kind of pick your brain off of, right? So I was picking her brain because she just went with Quinn Evans as well. And she gave me a host of information of what to do. And I tried out someone who wanted to partner with me and buy me out and things of that nature. Because it's good to start a business, but you don't know what you have until someone wants to buy it, and then you're not sure what you want to do, because you're doing good just to even figure out, can I make it to year 5, right? Or can I make it till tomorrow, really? And so by the time you realize that the years just keep going, and then you look up and someone's like, oh, well, we would be interested. And then, I'm picking Sandra's brain and I'm like, well, what do I do? And how do I get out of here? And how do I exit in the things? And she was saying the same things that she said before, it's that idea of just knowing. So I walked in with someone probably from October till February of this year that wanted to buy us out. We've been traveling a lot. So we have an office in Detroit and now we have one in Atlanta. And a crazy person that I am, I don't know why I've done that, but I have. And so we have 2 locations. We have 6 in Detroit and we're going to have, I think, 15 here. So it's just crazy. But at the time when I was working with someone for these past 8 months, I thought, oh, I'm going to hang my hat up. I know what I'm going to do. I know how I'm going to exit. But then I got into this whole process with some of my other mentors and friends. And it's like, I believe in God and my whole being of that. And it's like, how are you going to sell something that I gave you, right? And not only that I gave you, but that I'm in charge of. So then I'm like, what? I don't want to do this anymore, right? And but it just keeps going. And I'm so grateful for the journey. I'm grateful for how I've gone. And so I can't sell it now because it's not mine to sell, right? And so now here we are, and we're 2 firms strong, and now we're going to be going into a whole nother realm, which will be coming out next. Probably in the fall will be an announcement of what I've been doing as I've been in hiding. But I wanted to come out of hiding because, in our group of the Black Women of Architecture, we've been talking about, businesses, and everyone's been talking about how do we get to a business. And so I wanted to make sure that I was here today to give that knowledge. But yeah, you just don't know how it's going to end, right? Whether it's an exit strategy, someone's buying you out, whether you grow, whether you expect to move to a whole nother state, you just kind of have to go with the flow and not get so bogged down with it. And I would say to everyone who wants to start, just start, right? And I think everything else will kind of go do its course.
All right, I have some audience questions. That was sort of all of our pre-planned questions. I've tried to been watching the chat, and I know that's been very busy. Thank you, Ingrid, for capturing a lot of the talking points. I really appreciate that. I told Mashanta that we have to make sure we capture the chat because I appreciate you grabbing all of the statements from our speakers here. Let's go to a question about licenses maybe and liability insurance. So there were a couple of questions about did you have your license when you first started, and the credibility it gives you, and I guess not only maybe your architecture license, but if there's any other licenses that you guys felt were important, or certifications, either before you got started in your firm or once you got started and realized you needed it. So I don't know who wants to jump in on that first.
I'll strongly recommend, because I believe it's a legal issue. You have to have your license before you go out and advertise for work. And pretty much every state will say that. Even to go after work in a certain city, you have to have the business license for that particular jurisdiction. And then you have to have the professional license to even just pursue the work So you don't even have to have a job yet. So be very careful if you're out there trying to get architectural services work and you don't have the license yet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And so the business, the way I positioned it was that we were specializing in sustainability and historic preservation and blending the two, because I just got really tired of people thinking that they were mutually exclusive. And so I got my lead AP credential back in 2006, and then I had my license by 2013. So I was basically setting up the business for about a year as we were trying to go forward. My business partner was already licensed. He'd been licensed for like 30 years at that point. So we were basically using his architecture license to go after the work. But then I got my license shortly thereafter, because that became another sticking point of credibility, and knowing that, legally you can't call yourself an architect if you don't have your architecture license. So that just became a really big and important piece for me to have my license so I could actually call myself an architect.
Yeah, that's the same thing that I said too. I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be able to say that I'm an architect. So I was definitely licensed before we started, and that 4-month period that I was before we got work, we spent a lot of time doing paperwork for different certifications: minority owned, DBE, disadvantaged owned business, City of Detroit owned business, and got all of our certifications in line. During that time, meeting every day at the library. We hadn't even had an office yet. So it's a lot of stuff that you could do in the background in the meantime to get yourself up and ready to go. Because it does come into play when you're ready for that opportunity when it comes along. Like when we were ready for those other firms to approach us with all of the Detroit-owned business certifications and DBE certifications, and which helped with airport work. So it just helped with getting the work later on. They didn't even have to worry about the paperwork at that point.
Gotcha.
And I would agree with that. It's very important to have your license. When you're in the bigger firms, you just don't think about ever starting. You just don't. And I think it's important to have your license, all the credentials that's going to be an issue. I wasn't licensed when I started. And then you need to have your women's, and then also minority if you're a woman. So I would include all of it. I would just go down the list and try to make sure you have it all, because someone's going to call you on it, and they're going to say what you don't have and what you should have and things of that nature. So I would definitely make sure you have all of those in place. And then, and for those who don't have their license and, were scared to start, like myself, I was scared to start, but I knew I had to. My mother, she's 73, she's an entrepreneur. My dad, he was an architect, so he was an entrepreneur as well. And he passed away when I was 24, 25. And, at the time when I was scared to start, I was like, well, how am I going to get work? And how am I going to get people if I don't have my license? And my mom's like, is anyone knocking at your door? And I was like, no. She's like, so then just start first to see if this is even an idea, or is this a hobby, right? Because if you can't last 5 years, it's a hobby. And I thought, wow, okay. So she said, well, give it 5 years, work on getting your license within that 5 years, and see if you can even get work before you back yourself out and you're so scared. So for probably the first couple of years, I had this quote of just from my pastor who told me, like, just do it scared. So I was scared every day, with license, no license, kid. Now I'm married. My husband and I have been married for 13 years, and we have 3 kids, 10, 5, and 1, right? And you still just keep going. So I would say to everyone, don't let it stop you from not starting. Just go ahead and start. And then on the way, if somebody will come and they'll knock on your door and they'll be like, okay, we're ready for you to do a project. And it will happen, because I did my first joint venture with Quinn Evans, with Liz Nibby. And it will happen. And then you'll realize that I think I need to get my license. And then more people will recognize you. And you're like, okay, now I think I need to get my women's. And then I think I need to get my minority, because it's just a cycle. So I would encourage that. But I wouldn't say don't start because you don't have it. I would say go ahead and start, and people will come, and God will send people within your way that will help you along the journey. For sure.
Absolutely. I so agree with all of that. And I just wanted to add that doing it scared is something that we all had to do. And so as you're trying to figure out what next to do, think of it, if you're driving from DC to New York at night, you're not going to see the entire path illuminated as you're driving. You're only going to be able to see as far as your headlights. And as long as you keep going in the direction of your headlights and doing what you can see, you'll get there, but you have to keep going. And if you don't start, then you're not going to be able to get momentum to keep going.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, so another group of questions came about, I wouldn't say like mission-based work. Sandra, you talked a little bit about this, about stuff that you're doing sort of maybe with the volunteer work, but someone else also asked about nonprofit architecture firms. And there was another question about B Corp. And I know that's become popular maybe over the last like 5 years or so, 10 years, as sort of another way to think about doing business. So from your perspective, is this something that you guys have thought of as you're in your firms, or I guess if you had it just do over again, is that something that you have thought about?
I could start. So I have to say something with entrepreneurship. I don't think the bug ever leaves you. So I am actually, I actually still have now another business, which is Noir Design Part T, which is the organization that Karen Burton and I started. And we have that set up as an LLC, and we're in talks of like, should that be a nonprofit? Because we're documenting the work of African-American architects in Michigan, trying to tell that story, and it's very mission-based. With Centric Design Studio, we were LLC, just because we had multiple partners within the organization, wanted to limit liability between each of the partners, and we wanted kind of freedom within that tier structure to bring on others if necessary when we set up our operating agreement. So I've just learned about a lot more about the business model of practice with a nonprofit as the focus. And there's some successful firms out there doing that. You have DJDS out of Oakland, designing just designing spaces, and Colette out of New Orleans with Brian Lee.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely say look at both of them if you're looking at a nonprofit kind of based entity, a way to practice architecture. I'm looking at it for our other project, Noir Design Part T, just from a standpoint of not as a practice of architecture, but as more in a historian type role. So yeah, once you get the, like I said, once you get the entrepreneurship bug, I don't think it's going to leave even after I sold my my practice. So.
Anybody else want to jump in on that?
So we were an S Corp,
Okay.
which was very similar to an LLC, but I would definitely recommend starting with an LLC or a PLLC and making sure you have your liability insurance.
Yeah, that was another question that came up. People asked about liability
100%
insurance and
have all the
when to get it.
insurances. Yes, I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on the internet, but you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself and your assets and your future earnings and all that stuff. So expect the best but plan for the worst, and so you want to make sure that you are not setting yourself up to be liable for anything, because we design the buildings, we don't control how they get constructed, and it's a whole liability thing. So yes to insurance.
Actually,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, someone, when I actually was setting up my advisory board, one of the advisors on the board was an architect. He said, okay, the first question he asked me is, do you have professional liability insurance? I said, yes. He said, okay, you're for real. I can be on your advisory board. So definitely do that. And it's like everything Nikita said. And actually, you need a team as an entrepreneur. You need even when we were going through our acquisition, we had our accountant as part of our team. We had
the lawyer
as part of our team. We have our professional liability insurance was all at the table when we were talking about this, and some members of our advisory board. So definitely keep a team around you.
Yeah, I would agree. So we started off with a sole proprietor because it was just me, of course. And then I went to LLC, and then now I'm an S Corp. And so someone had asked earlier about the professional liability insurance, and yes, you need all of that. So that goes back to that list I was talking about, from insurance to, because you will find that if you don't have professional liability insurance or insurance, you can't even cash a check when you start to get to contractors, right? Because they need that information for you to be able to even work. So all that has to be turned into to them as well. And I would say, make sure you just have all of those accolades. So definitely insurance, and then we switch to S Corp, and that's where we're gonna stay for a while, I hope.
Kathy, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about that, but. Oh, you're on mute, Kathy.
Yeah, sorry. Just to, I guess, maybe reiterate the things that you need to start a firm. I give this talk to students, college students sometimes. So I always tell them first to have good credit, because down the line you want to buy a firm. Make sure that your credit is on point from day one. Then get the EIN number. You go on the IRS website, get your federal. What does it stand for? your business
employee identification number, or employer identification number, I guess.
And get
very easy to do. You just go on the website, you log in.
Get a bank account. Go to your local bank. Put in the minimum amount for a business account, and then the things that Sandra just mentioned. Have a attorney. Get your liability insurance. Apply for your business license, and of course your architectural license. Then you're established at that point.
What was your structure? Was it sole proprietor when you started, Kathy?
PLLC. In Maryland, PLLC. Different states call it different things. In Virginia, you're LLC. In Maryland, you're PLLC. The firm that I acquired was a corporation. I think it's SS. It was shares. So that was a corporation. So eventually, we'll see which strategy I use to merge them all together. So. Okay.
Okay, so our end time was supposed to be 2:30, so I just want to be mindful of people's time. We did have a question about negotiation and talking about project negotiation. So if you guys could touch on that. Kathy, I don't know if you want to start with that. So the question was from Matiana. She said, just would love to hear experience with project negotiation and any tips. I know for me personally, I actually took a negotiation class as part of my master's degree because I felt like that was something I was weak in. So I don't know if any of you all have done that, or how you sort of like became experienced as negotiators, or comfortable with doing the negotiation.
The product though, not project negotiation?
Yeah, project negotiation.
That's really gonna has to do a lot with the scope of work, what you are providing services for, and what they are seeking services for, and make sure that you bring that business point of view that Nikita was talking about to the conversation. You're not doing anything for free. So your scope, your contract has to define exactly what you are doing, and then put the monetary value to that service. As far as negotiations, I'll let Nikita and Sandra speak to that, because they're the ones who just
Gotcha.
Better your company.
But Kathy makes a good point in starting with the scope of services. And so one of the things that you will find is that clients underestimate how much architecture services cost, and they will typically want you to do it cheaper than what you say you will do it for. That is fine for them to ask you to do it cheaper. Just make sure that if they ask you to do a reduction, that you also alter your scope so that you're not giving them the same scope for a reduced fee. And then also, one of the things I had to learn was not to negotiate against myself. So if a client comes to you and says, oh, this is too expensive, can you do it cheaper? Don't just say, okay, what about $2,000 cheaper? What about $5,000 cheaper? No, the question you ask them is, okay, well, what number were you looking for us to get to? Because you want them to set the extent so that you don't end up lowballing yourself because you didn't make them be more explicit about what their budget was. But yeah, negotiation is a whole other thing, but those would be the two things that I would stress on.
Yeah, so I would definitely say, as far as negotiations, it takes some time because, you know, if you're just now starting, and it just depends on where you are. So if you're in the middle of things and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm past the idea of writing a proposal, right? So I would encourage that you know how to do that and what that means. But then also being able to be willing to take some of the scope out, because we're not working for free. You will start to realize that, one, when you get to a certain level, you're realizing that you're paying for your team and you're paying for them to have bills. Like one of our employees, she just bought a house. So then I'm like, what? Okay. Right? And so it's stuff like that you just don't even think about. And I'm like, all right, well,
You're responsible
good.
now, right?
Yeah, sometimes you're even more responsible, and you're happy that everyone's growing and buying houses. But in my brain, I'm like, we're in the middle of still a pandemic, but okay, you know. And so those are the things that my mind starts to understand, right? But I think at the end of the day, you have to really negotiate, because you're not working for free. It's not even an option, you know? So be okay with the fact that your team comes first. You know, if you look at our profit and loss, people will say, our accountant will say, oh, well, at least we know all your money's going. Yes, to my team. Why? Because I need them. I really do need them. So they get me to where I'm at. My assistant tells me where I'm going to go tomorrow. I mean, you just need a really, really good team. So don't be afraid to say to a client, this is just what it costs. And don't be afraid to referral either. I'm good
say
at
no.
I'm really
How many
good
times have you said no? Can we talk about that?
I'm learning that. I'm learning how to
Many.
say no. And to the point to where I'm like, I'm so sorry. You know what? I'm not a good fit for that, but I know who is. And this firm is. Why? Because money is going to come. It's going to come regardless. If you're good at what you do, you will get the money. People will love you and you'll be great. The difference is, are you enjoying what you're doing? That's really it. If you're not enjoying it, then yeah, hang it up, move on so you can be bigger. But it will come. It will, I promise you. The money will come, the clients will come, but you have to be willing to start. You just have to keep going.
So I put a book in the a chat for recommendation for negotiation. Bring Yourself by Maury. Actually, I look at books kind of after the fact, but I'm a very face-to-face type of person, like to talk to people. So she was actually an instructor in the negotiations part of our Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I'm not getting paid by Goldman Sachs, but that should tell you this is a really good program because it touches just on every little aspect of your business. And one of the phrases they kept saying in the class that I now say all the time is, you have to find time to work on your business and not in your business. So you'll get pulled into your project side of your business and you can let marketing slip. You can let some financial things slip. You have to be, and that's part of the book that Nikita recommended too, E-Myth. You know, it's like you have to kind of be the one to step back and see the big picture of everything and make sure the little pieces are not falling to the wayside. So in that negotiations class, it's similar to what Nikita said. You learn how to let other people talk, so you don't leave things on the table and don't feel like you have to fill dead space. And when the room gets silent, kind of wait. You know, a number may come out of their mouth that you're not ready for. And if you're afraid of saying big numbers, get in the mirror and say, yeah, my fee is $9 million. And you look in the mirror and it's like, this is what I mean, whatever you know, whatever you need to take to get comfortable with that. So, you know, all of those tips, you know, that they help out, you know, and as far as sometimes you don't negotiate in person. So, you know, some of the things when we were going back and forth about our firm being acquired, I was like, you know, one of the things is everybody has to come. You know, it's like, they're my team. You have to give everybody a job opportunity or I'm not coming. So it's just like, you know, the things that are important to you, put those things on the table, and then see and be quiet for a minute and see what kind of reaction you get.
That's a really good lesson, because I think people would be thinking about, like, they may think about themselves, but be maybe afraid to ask if they have staff, like, what's going to happen to my staff and how do I make sure. Just like Chandra said, if you know your staff person just purchased a house and you're like, that person needs a job, how am I going to make sure they have a job? That's very important. So thanks, Chandra.
And the worries of payroll are real.
Yeah, you have to look at that number every 2 weeks. All right, there was one more question. This is a question that I think we should address. I want to ask you all, So we have Tom, who is a design builder, and I guess he's with Clark Construction because he's asking sort of from that perspective. And he says, as they're working on issues and addressing needs of minority businesses, what do they need to consider to create equity? So I guess coming from the construction side, and it says, well, let me just read his question. To grow the pool of architects and designers who we can partner with. Most of these projects are very large and complex, which present challenges to working with new or small firms, exploring some ways to get past this, but want to ensure our efforts address the needs of minority businesses. As we're working on the issue, what do we need to consider to create equity? So you guys want to talk about that? Maybe partnering with larger companies, or what they would need to do to come to you guys to be partners.
So
Oh, sorry. The idea of partnering with larger companies, it's been out there for forever, but problem is it doesn't get enforced, right? So the companies typically just will do whatever is convenient for them. If the jurisdiction or the company or whatever enforces that, then it does help the smaller firms to partner and to get some much needed experience. And our experience, we are partnered with very large national firms, Gensler, HOK, on some very large building Stantec, and you know that they are good partners, or you want to look for a partner who will also sub to you. So we are on prime on other, like the forensic lab that we're doing right now, with a very large WSP, formerly Parsons, they're sub to us. So if a company that large will sub to you, then you're doing you're doing something right. So I think encouraging the larger firms to partner in either direction with the minority firms would be a good thing for them to do.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Creating equity with a partnership or with a larger firm?
So we did that in the very beginning, like I said, partnering with larger firms. Like some very good relationships, and we had been successful in having relationships go both ways. We had teamed with Ghaffari and Associates on a project, and then they were our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing consultants on another project for the Techtown first floor renovation project. So like you said, if you know you're doing something right, if they are willing to continue to work with you, willing to continue to look at other opportunities with you, even at the RFP stage. So that starts the conversation. It's literally, it's all about building relationships. And in the same way you build relationship with clients, you can build relationships with these other firm entities for projects and to leverage yourself in other ways. And for me, the hardest thing to do as a smaller firm was keep up with all the paperwork that was required to do government work. So teaming with larger firms that already have that paperwork part in place for government work, and that allows them to get credits as well. I think that's a good way to build, continue those relationships, and then help the equity of your firm to kind of build up. When you're on the larger project you're on, the more revenue you get, and that kind of gives you the cushion that your firm needs to do other things.
Yeah, I'd agree on I'd second the equity piece and looking at your own firm. So particularly at Clark and the other construction firms that may be looking to hire other minority firms. Construction is an old boys firm, or old boys company. You're going to go with the subs that you know that you've worked with before. And so if none of your people have existing relationships with other minority firms, you're likely not going to hire many minority firms. You're going to go to your friends. So I would encourage you to encourage your staff and the workers to actually develop those relationships with minority firms, so that you're not just picking off of a list and you're actually going off of established relationships.
Yeah, and I would just agree with that, with all of that. Just, it's the networking that you're doing.
Okay, we're just about at time. Mashanta has been posting resources in the chat for everyone. So someone had asked about saving the chat. If you open the chat up, there's 3 little dots and you can save the chat there, and we're gonna try to save the chat, and the video is being recorded. So we'll get that posted either on both our Facebook pages, the Black Women in Architecture and Design Facebook page, as well as the Writing the Vortex Facebook page, and the BWA-network.com website. As we close up, I just want to ask all of our speakers if you have any sort of final words or final thoughts that you want to share with the audience. I know that this was sort of a spur of the moment kind of like, can we get this together talk and that we've been sort of planning over the last couple of weeks based on someone's question about starting a firm. And I guess the hope is to do it again, possibly. So if there were questions that you had that we didn't get answered, we'll try to have a follow-up to this. And yeah, so if Nikita, you're on the screen now for me. So if you want to start maybe with any final thoughts.
Sure. I would say if you have any inclination that you want to start your own firm, I think you should go for it. And by go for it, I mean actually sit down and put together an outline, start thinking through the business plan, start thinking through the steps, read the books, and start diving into it to get a sense of if this is something you're really interested in, and to recognize the fact that running an architecture business, think of it as 50-50, architecture and then business. You got to get into the business side of it. So spend some time, if you're not confident or comfortable on the business side, spend some time in that realm so you can really see if that's something you're interested in. And then give it a go. You're not going to know if it's going to work until you try it.
And you can always go back to a big firm, right?
Exactly. You got options.
Let's go next. Kathy?
I know we're in a pandemic now, but I would encourage you to consider still starting. Don't let that deter you. Most of new firms or small firms start during a recession. Obviously, people get laid off, and the only thing I can do is start my own company, right? So that's a very real thing. And so I would encourage you not to get scared because of the times we are in. Just know that this trend happens, the recession in the architecture industry, it's every 7 to 10 years, it's gonna happen. So prepare. We're probably, just a couple years away. If we're not in it already, we're a couple years away from the next recession. So as long as you know that and can be prepared for it, then you'll make it through.
Chandra?
Yeah, so I would say for everyone who's interested in starting, I would agree just to go ahead and start. I would also encourage you to think about what are you going to do that's going to be different. When I started, I did have a mentor that let me know, there are other architecture firms out here. So how are you going to be different from the others that are there? And I think that's very important, because you just don't want to come out here and start and say, okay, well, I'm great, right? And you should work with me because we're doing this. You should know what you're doing, going against the grain of the others that are already out here and they're already doing it. So then that way people will be able to call on you. So we were youth and we're still youth and we still value kids and we're still very strong in that area. And so just know what you're doing before you just kind of come out here and start a firm. I would definitely say, know what you're going to be doing different, going against the grain of why people will be able to not acknowledge you.
Thank you for saying that. That was a question I didn't get to touch on, was talking about niche. So maybe on our follow-up session, we can talk about that. But Sandra, any final words?
Actually, a plug for a follow-up conversation is book writing. I know Kathy's done it, but that's definitely something that it kind of shows yourself as an expert. So it's a good arsenal to have in your toolbox.
I'd be happy to publish anyone that wants to.
Well, we're working on a book for Noir Design Party, so I may be talking to you. I would definitely agree with what everybody has said. Like when I was talking before, 2001 is when our firm was made into an LLC, and in the background, even while working for other firms, we were doing little things to build up our firm. For the women on the call, it's like you're birthing a baby, right? So what is its name? What does it want to do? What is the culture of that entity that you want to have? And for Centric, it was like, yeah, we're focused in sustainable practice, but then has a mixture of architecture and graphics together. How do you make that happen within your practice? So those are the things you could think about, brainstorm, read about now, like I said, during the time of a pandemic. for anybody who's not studying for the ARE, I say study for the ARE first, but that would be the second thing. Study for the ARE first. Do not get off course. Study for ARE first. Then your next group of studies should be on a business of architecture and what it takes to get that started.
I'll give a plug for the NOMA ARE Facebook group. So anyone that's studying, Tiana, I'm going to call you out because I saw you in there saying you need to get your license. So yes, get that license. And there is a NOMA ARE Facebook group. So if anybody wants to join that group or doesn't know about it, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I'd be happy to add you. Sandra, I liked your birthing the baby metaphor. As a mom, my only thought was that with this baby, you can decide what it's going to do versus like a real child. Oh, yes.
Was I mentioned? Was I beckoned?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think we are just about at the end. I don't know if Mashanta, you want to bring back up your flyer there. But thank you, everyone. I'm just looking at our participants. We had almost 60 participants. It's been great. Mashanta, you want to say anything? Thank you so much for hosting on the tech side.
You're welcome, and thank you guys. We're going to follow up with another session and give you more specific details on the steps and the links you need to go to establish yourself legally. I think that's really important.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all our speakers.
Great seeing everybody.
Great seeing you guys too.